Hi, how you doing, and welcome back to a video on the channel. This is our first video of the new season, the 24-25 FPL season. We're going to begin with our very first draft team on the video for you today. Now, this team really is my very first draft. I've not sort of gone away and tweaked it loads to then make it look really good for the video. This is, we try and be genuine and open, and this is my first draft team. So it's not the finished product. There are lots of changes that I'm thinking of making, but they require on different sorts of more information coming out, a bit more pre-season. Let's see if any teams make any transfers and possible injury news moving forward. But that's part of the fun of it, isn't it? At the start of the season, you can tinker with your teams a little bit here and there. Sometimes you might be making wholesale changes as well. If you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. The supporters really appreciate it. It was fantastic last season. We got up to over 150 subscribers and we did finish 25k overall in FPL. So if you do want to keep track of all the updates, team news, how my own team is doing, as well as advice and transfers throughout the season, we're going to plan on uploading a video every day or so over the next few weeks before the season starts. Hit that subscribe button and let's get into looking at my first draft team. So as we get the team on the board here, we're going to start with the goalkeepers, and I'm picking Pickford because he was the top scoring goalkeeper last season. Last year I had Onana and he was someone who I had in my team I think every week, even when we were free hitting, wildcarding, because goalkeepers, if you can get one that's sort of going to play and make a lot of saves and get the occasional clean sheet, then it's as good as anyone else. Now, 5 million is quite expensive. I'd never go over 5 million, really. I'd usually go for sort of 4.5 million goalkeepers, but I guess if I've got a 5 million starter keeper and 4 million on the bench, that kind of averages out to 4.5 anyway. I do think that Everton are the sort of team who kind of they cram players into their own penalty box and restrict the opposition players to long range shots, and Sean Dyche is really good at setting up a defensive unit, which we saw last season with Pickford. I think he got 13 clean sheets, so you can't really get much better than that. I think he was the highest scoring goalkeeper in that regard as well. Kind of depends on what transfers they make. There's rumours about Branthwaite leaving Everton, which will obviously have a bit of an impact on their defence, but it's whether you prefer the system over individual players. So whether you prefer Sean Dyche's system over the players that are in it, or whether you think a player leaving is going to have too much of an impact to take Pickford. For me, he's a really good choice. So into the defence we go, and I've got Saliba, Porro and Gvardiol starting. All solid defenders, top 3 of the top 6 scoring defenders last season. So they're able to do it across a consistent amount of time. Gvardiol really did have that good end to the season as well, scoring a lot of goals, getting some assists, and for me he is someone who could hit the ground running in this season as well. Now Saliba is part of probably the most solid defence out there in terms of Arsenal's defence. He is also the player who is most likely to start in that defence as well. I think doesn't necessarily have the same aerial threat as someone like a Gabriel, but he is someone that you think is always going to be that first name on the team sheet when you think of Arsenal's defence. And then we've got Pedro Porro, who had a bit of an inconsistent season, but at times was on set pieces, did get a few assists across the course of the year, and is a pretty solid player. Spurs did start well last season. They've got some nice fixtures to begin this season, so I would expect the same in the first chunk of the year. So the midfield, I've got a few risks to start with, and we'll kind of get onto that in a second, but I do want to start with the more solid players, I guess, in Son and Gordon. Now, for me, Son is someone who has a great first fixture against Leicester City at home, and as we just said, Spurs are a team that typically do start well. After that first fixture, I could swap Son straight for someone like Palmer and then take advantage of Chelsea's fixtures. I think when you are planning your first team of the season, it is a bit like a wild card. You are going to have to look at some transfers moving forward. So you say, this is my team for now. How am I going to move off certain players? What are the options to go to? I think even if you're not planning on making transfers, it's good to have that in your head in case someone does get injured and then you're not panicking of the different routes to go down. Anthony Gordon at 7.5 million does look really good. I do quite like his price still. Newcastle have reasonable fixtures to start the season. Anthony Gordon is their main attacking threat, especially down the left. And I think after he didn't get many games and minutes for England over the summer, I do think that he will have a point to prove and he will start the season strong. Now, on to the risky picks. I've gone with Diogo Jota here. Now, when he plays, he's really effective and efficient, but I'm wary of his injury record and his lack of game time over the last season or so. And I'm also aware of Liverpool sort of adopting a new system. They've got quite a lot of attacking players to fit in that system. And I kind of want to get a bit more information, a bit more of an eye test from them, whether that's in pre-season or the start of the Premier League, before I go too heavy on Liverpool and throw my eggs in the Jota basket. So it is a risk. He does have potential upside. 7.5 million is an okay price, but then you compare that to someone like Gordon on the other side, and you say, oh, they probably are quite different in terms of expectations for the start of the year. I've also gone with Smith Rowe. He's just transferred to Fulham, and a bit like Jota, it's maybe too early to sort of have him in and rely on him for points, but he has got that sort of opportunity now moving forward where he can get consistent minutes if he can stay fit. Fulham do play quite an attacking style, scored some goals towards the end of last season. I think he is someone who could have a bit of a breakout year. He obviously needs things to go his way. So up front, we've gone with Isak, Muniz and Haaland. Now, for me, Isak is probably the most nailed-on player I'm most sure about in my starting 11 and in the 15. I think he had a fantastic end to the season last season, and he's someone who is going to be starting for Newcastle week in, week out. I do believe that from now on. 8.5 million isn't that bad either, especially when you compare it to someone like Haaland. Now, Haaland is Haaland. He takes up so much budget, and it's whether you feel like you can recreate his points elsewhere. It's actually 6 million more than any other striker. And I actually think Ollie Watkins at 9 million. We banged on about Ollie Watkins all last year, but him at 9 million is an absolute bargain. And if I didn't have Haaland in my team, Watkins would be straight in. One upside of owning Haaland is that you can quickly move from any other player in a couple of moves, and that you might want to do that in order to increase your team value overall. I think when you spread the funds out across your whole team, it does make those quick transfers, take a couple of moves, maybe 3 moves, including a hit. It does take up a bit more effort to make those transfers. If you've got Haaland in your team and you quickly want to drop it down to take advantage of someone who is a surprise player of the season, you can do that really quickly, and then you'll also have some more money in the bank. Haaland also does require those players around him in Man City to play well in order for him to score points and create him chances. Man City players have had a bit of a busy summer, so I wouldn't be too surprised if they got off to a slow start. And with that, Haaland could also get off to a slow start. And, it's whether you think it's a slow start for Haaland or a slow start overall. I do think he might disappoint early on. Muniz, a bit like Isak, is someone who did finish the season quite well. 6 million is a good price. It's whether you want to put all your eggs in a basket of Fulham. I've actually got 2 Fulham players in my starting 11. It's maybe too many for a mid-table team, but for the price and the points you might get from him, I think he is a reasonable budget option. So the bench is very weak and does need upgrading. Davis is worth noting. I think he got 18 assists in the Championship last year, and Face will probably stay there because he's a 4 million defender. And like we say every season, you want those cheap players on your bench. You don't want loads of money on your bench. I would like to upgrade Hodge to a bit more of an attacking midfielder, someone who's going to get me, that first option off the bench points a bit more consistently. Maybe give me the odd selection headache now and then. So overall, bear with me, this team rating is 85%. Shout out to Fantasy Football Hub for their team rater tool. Go use it if you haven't already. The value is 99.5 million. Now, we did say this team is, a bit of it is a first draft. It's something that I've thought about a little bit. I've gone and stuck players on a board, and this is my starting point. Now, it could look completely different by the time the season rolls around. I think the strengths are that it is a strong defence, and we do have a couple of big hitters in Isak, Haaland and Son. I think are really good, and the defence does look pretty solid throughout. I don't really have any issues with any of that. The weaknesses is there's those midfield risks. I'm not a fan of it. and the thin bench. I think the real solution to this would be to get rid of Haaland. Now, when I do transfer out Haaland and spread the funds about, that will be what my next draft will look like. So in terms of moving forward, that's where I'm at. I do think it's reasonably solid. I've got a couple of players in there. I think Pickford, I think Vardiol, and I think Isak are definitely players who I want in game week 1 at the start of the season. Players like Son and Porro, they've got a good fixture to start with. I might want to just see how they go. So let me know what you think about the team. Don't be too harsh. Remember, it's the first draft. I know it's not the finished article, but if you've got any ideas, anyone you think is going to go under the radar that I might miss out on or overlook, let me know. If you've got any questions as well, let me know in the comments. I will get back to you. Thank you very much for listening. Please do like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.